Hi, thanks for joining us today for our webinar on navigating SEO in a highly regulated market. I am Ed Coles, the SEO lead at Kaizen, and I'll be joined by Charlotte Crowther, the digital PR manager here at Kaizen as well. Today we're going to be talking through a few different areas. But firstly, to give you a bit of a understanding of who we are at Kaizen, we're a digital growth agency, and we've worked with a wide variety of clients from startups to big household names such as Lego and Adidas. We're a group of around 45 marketing experts, and we specialize in digital PR, SEO, and social. And the reason you're here today is we really understand the challenges of leveraging SEO in highly regulated markets. And we actually specialize in helping build authority and trust for our clients, whilst helping navigate the really difficult and strict compliance and legal policies that we see in the your money, your life sector. We've got quite a lot of experience, in particular with finance clients in this space, with the likes of Molo, Monzo, SumUp, Compare the Market, Aqua, Sterling Bank and Capital on Tap, just to name a few. So we're really well placed to give a bit of kind of advice as to how you can help manage yourself in those highly regulated markets. So firstly, before we begin, why is SEO particularly important in a highly regulated market space? Well, the first thing is it can really help build client trust and ease decision making if you've got really well input SEO and content. It helps address the strong competition that you see in the SERPs with your major competitors. It can also help you target and reach highly specific client segments as well, depending on where they are in the purchasing journey. And you can also help cut through some of that noise as well with really high quality content. It also will let you market particular niche products that typically would have a more steeper learning curve. You're able to kind of provide a lot more information a lot more readily to consumers. And it also then helps kind of retain those consumers and customers over the long term by kind of reinstating and reinforcing your position within that space. So today we will be covering kind of three major areas on how we can kind of work in this regulated space. The first bit is going to be how to compete with legacy brands, how to improve their kind of share of voice and add value in an already saturated marketplace. The second part, we will be looking at the importance of EEAT, particularly in the your money, your life market. And thirdly, we'll look at how to navigate the compliance and the compliance challenges and implement effective processes to maximize success. So to start off with then, we'll kind of be discussing how to compete with legacy brands. Now, we've taken the finance sector here as a bit of an example of a highly regulated market, but all of the topics that we're discussing today will be applicable to other highly regulated industries as well. So what we do see, at least in the finance market as well, is that there is a huge number of legacy brands across the board, across each different type of kind of product and service that's offered. So we have price comparison or editorial based content where you've got the likes of Compare the Market, Go Compare, Money Supermarket, Money Saving Expert, etc. But then on the other side, you've also got the kind of product offering based businesses. So you've got banks such as NatWest, MasterCard, Post Office, Barclays, etc. Now, one of the challenges that we have with these kind of legacy brands is they've been around a very, very long time. And as a result of that, they've got a very good standing with Google. And where this ultimately comes into play is legacy domains have a really high authority and site authority. So you can see here, this is the examples that were listed on the slide before. We can see that the majority of them are in the high 80s or kind of high 70s in terms of domain rating. This means that they've got really strong authority and ranking power with Google, and therefore the content that they create is more likely to rank than maybe, say, a challenger brand that's coming up and just starting from scratch. Now, there's a number of ways in which we can actually kind of challenge these legacy domains, but there's one thing that we really need to do that's kind of paramount, and that's going to be building your own site's domain authority as a priority. That is kind of the #1 step in order to compete. But alongside this, you also need to be conducting strategic link building and engaging with the relevant niches in your area to kind of help boost that authority. You need to be creating really innovative content that's kind of standing out amongst your competitor set, and you want to be kind of innovating within kind of what those SERP winners are currently doing and what you can do to replicate that. And then finally, you need to have really comprehensive content to boost and support all of that. And that is going to be the main way that you can challenge these brands, but we'll discuss that in a little bit more detail. In order to break through the noise, particularly in the finance sector, there's two main ways that we can do this, and it will depend on what your product or service offering is here. But there's roughly kind of two types of pages that we see generally. The first is transactional landing pages. So this is where you are trying to get people to convert, whatever that may be. It may be a sign up to a credit card, it could be an acquisition form, it could just be learn more, or it could be a download of a guide. Whatever that transaction is, this is where we're trying to drive people to convert. And in order to break through the noise, essentially what we're going to need to do is establish some really good best practice for these types of pages. And the main thing that we can do here is be really well targeted for and well optimized for target keywords. We want to be targeting keywords that are broad and have got a good search volume, but also relevant to your niche where you will be able to rank. We need to provide strong EEAT across the whole website, but particularly on those pages. And there's a number of different elements that you can look to do here, and we'll talk about those in a bit more detail. But you also need to really clearly define your product and service requirements. What is your service offering? Provide as much detail to be as helpful and useful to users as possible. But you also want to be hitting top-level informational content as well. So you want to be targeting those broader generic questions that people might have, branded questions that people might have, but you also want to go into enough detail that they've got the clarity that they need in order to convert. The other part of this is informational content. So this is more kind of a broader stage of the funnel where somebody's maybe not quite ready to purchase, but looking for a little bit more information. And what we want to do here is some of the features are still the same. We want to be really well optimized for target keywords again. We still want to have strong EEAT signals. But what we also want to do here is provide a bit of a unique slant and point of view as to why you are maybe separate from the competition. So this could be a USP. It could be what makes you special, essentially. And that will really help kind of set you apart from the competition. It also allows you to be really engaging with the audience, and with accessible kind of user experience as well, you can really help channel the user through the website and provide even more information. Again, this is kind of supported as well by having a really comprehensive internal linking strategy. So making sure that core pages are linked through to relevant informational blogs or even product pages. One, it will help with site authority, channeling that through to the pages that you want to rank. But two, from a user experience perspective, it will funnel them through the website in the way that you want. So we know that when we implement this works really well. We've got a number of clients within the finance space. And when we have rolled out this strategy ourselves, we've seen some really strong improvements. So in this graph here, we can see visibility. So this is the average position across the whole keyword set that the site ranks for. We've seen really substantial increases year over year. And likewise, those increases in average position means you're higher up in the SERP, you're getting a higher click-through rate, and as a result, you're getting more clicks as a result. So across the large majority of our finance clients, we've seen really big uplifts in performance where we've applied this strategy. And what's really important as well is this strategy seems to be being rewarded by Google as well. In March, there was a very large core Google algorithm update. This looked at particularly helpful content. So Google is always looking to provide the most useful, valuable, helpful content to a user. And as a result, they've been rolling out more and more algorithm updates in order to refine the algorithm to provide this to users. The biggest one that we saw so far has been in March. And we can see that since the beginning of the rollout, on average, we've seen our average rank across finance clients go up 5.4 positions, which is really quite substantial across quite a large keyword set. So what we are seeing is that when this strategy is in place, it does seem to be being rewarded by Google. And as a result, it's something that if you're able to replicate, hopefully you will be able to see similar success. So as I mentioned, there's two types of pages. We've got transactional and informational. The next couple of slides look at some of the key areas that you can optimize those pages in order to kind of make the most impact. So when we look at transactional landing pages for best practice, some of this is kind of relatively standard bread and butter SEO, but some of it is really important, particularly in these highly regulated industries and your money, your life industries in particular. So the first bit that we want to be looking at is making sure that we have a keyword optimized header tag. So we want to make sure that we've got a really clear H1 title. We also want to make sure that metadata, so page title and meta description, is also optimized for those keywords. We also want to make it enticing for users as well, so they're more likely to click through when they're in the SERP. We also want to make sure that there is a lot of key information. And now this is like, if you could distill all of the information on the page into maybe 2 or 3 kind of key bullet points, this is the information that you want at the very top of the page. Google crawls a page from top to bottom, so the content at the top is probably considered more important than the content that is further down the page. So anything that is above the fold, and that is what is visible on the screen when it loads up, is considered more valuable to Google. So we want to make sure that we've got the key information at the top of the page. Likewise, we also want to include a CTA, a call to action above the fold, just in case the user does want to convert. It's nice and easy for them to do that, and they're likely to have a much higher conversion rate. The final point on here as well is if you do have a Trustpilot score, ratings and reviews, and I'll touch on this a bit later, are really valuable in instilling trust with Google. Having that, again, clearly visible on the page is very, very valuable. As we move a little bit further down the page, what you really want to do is differentiate your product from your competitors. So you want to provide really clear information on what the product is, all the product details. Try to use unique product images where you can, related to your own services, your own products. Optimize those with alt text as well to make sure that they're accessible for Google and for screen readers. And then at the bottom as well, one of the other things that we can look to do is explicitly address security. So mention that it is safe, that it is secure. This helps demonstrate trust with Google, but also gives a bit of reassurance to the consumer who's looking at the page. As we get further down as well, what we quite often see, again, is both qualitative and quantitative customer ratings. So again, we can have Trustpilot at the top with a bit of a badge, but if you actually want to include the reviews, they're incredibly helpful. Customer testimonials really help sell the trust and authority within that space, particularly one with customers, but two, Google. But another area that is really, really useful and allows us to target maybe more keywords and particularly informational-based content will be in an FAQ section at the bottom. So having some really clear branded informational content there is really helpful. You can break it down into kind of accordion expanding sections so it doesn't take up too much space, but it allows you to really provide a huge amount of information and target a large range of keywords all very effectively. The other thing that you can do if you're looking particularly at a product page as well is add some element of kind of requirement criteria if it's needed. So here, for example, we've got Aqua. We've got, am I eligible for an Aqua Classic card? We've got some really clear product service requirements that are on the page so that the user doesn't need to navigate away. They are also very clear as to if they are going to potentially be able to be accepted for this card. And then we've got a CTA at the bottom as well to help kind of encourage the user to click through. This way, you're also kind of qualifying your leads to assure that somebody isn't necessarily going through the process who won't be eligible, and therefore it should hopefully improve conversion rates as well. What we can do when it comes to actual on-page copy within these transactional landing pages is we want to make sure that whilst we've got an optimized H1 tag, we also have optimized sequential headings as well. So you've got a H1, H2, H3, H4, etc. Now, Google does place greater priority to a H1 tag than it does to a H2, to a H3, to a H4, and it kind of staggers down that way. So we want to make sure that they're well optimized and that they're used in the correct sequential order. Not only is it useful for Google, but it will help structure your content more easily for users to read. But what we also want to do here is be targeting those kind of longer tail, non-brand or generic queries where we can kind of provide a deeper level of informational content. We can provide more information. Below the fold means it's not going to impact, hopefully, too much of the user journey, but it will help, again, provide more detail and clarity for the user on what your services are, and hopefully will guide them further down that sales funnel. And then finally, as I touched upon before, expandable content modules are really, really useful, not just for FAQs, but it's very helpful from a UX perspective, but again, for targeting content without it taking up a huge amount of space on the page. But the other part of this that is really important, and is often overlooked as well, is the impact of potential color blocking, using different sections, different colors, different text, etc. to one, help ease readability, and two, help engagement as well. It makes the site look better and it's easier for users to read as well. So that was transactional pages. But if we want to look at more informational based content, what we can do here is essentially follow a really clear structure. And this is something that we have done and works really well. Essentially, what we want to do is make sure all content that we create has a reason behind it. We're not creating content for the sake of creating content. So the first step of this is to carry out keyword research, essentially identify where those opportunities are within the search space and where you want to be targeting users. We want to be targeting really relevant informational-based keywords here that are relevant to kind of the key categories that you're sitting in. Using this keyword research, we then typically look at a content audit. We assess the content that's already on site, see how well it's performing, if there's any areas for opportunity, if there's any content gaps, and understand which topics or subtopics are more important and maybe need a bit more effort or a little less effort. Off the back of this, we tend to then add a layer of seasonality, because we know searches aren't consistent all the way through. You might have, particularly in the finance space, as we come to the end of the financial year and the beginning of the next financial year, you might see an uptick in people searching for stuff around ISAs, for example. So we want to make sure that we're accounting for that seasonality in place, and we're looking out and working out where those peak months are and targeting those with content effectively when it makes the most sense. Once we've got that seasonality in place, though, we can start building out a content calendar. So here we can kind of outline the ideas that we want to create in line with the keyword targeting and the seasonality as well. We can also look at competitors as well to see what type of content they're creating, to see if there's anything we can leverage there. And then the final part of this is, once the content calendar is created, you can create content briefs and content production and roll out these new pieces of content on site. And again, when it comes to optimization, a lot of the features that I just talked about, transactional pages, still stand. We want to make sure we've got optimized titles, meta descriptions, targeted on-page copy, that we're targeting strong EEAT signals across these as well. But all in all, this should give you a really clear template and guideline for how to kind of build informational-based content. But whilst there's a lot of challenges with dealing with kind of legacy brands, there is actually a lot that we can learn from legacy brands and how to kind of take some of those learnings and make them actionable for ourselves. So I'll pass over to Charlotte, who will discuss that in a bit more detail.
Thanks, Ed. Hi, thank you for joining us. As Ed has kind of alluded to, these legacy brands have been around for a long time. They offer a lot of different products, so they have been able to build up site authority. And site authority is built by lots of different ways, but also by making sure that you're driving backlinks back to the site. So this graph here shows the number of referring domains that 4 different legacy sites have against a competitor brand or a challenger brand. And you can see that there are thousands of different referring domains pointing back to those legacy brands that aren't pointing to the challenger brand. And this shows us really great opportunity. This means that kind of we can take a dive into those legacy brands and see what content they're creating, see how they're getting those links back, and using that to influence our digital PR strategy. One way of going about doing this is a link intersect. So a link intersect is a way to look at and get those exact referring domains that are pointing to competitors that aren't pointing to kind of your brand yourself. And this is a really helpful way to help us guide digital PR, both through the ideation process, but also through kind of the media list building process. So we can take these referring domains and categorize them, whether that's kind of regional outlets or national outlets or really relevant finance outlets, and we can guide our ideation down that route so that we can make sure that we're creating content that will land in those outlets to help close that gap. But also another way that we can use it is when building media lists. because we know that there is proof of concept that these outlets have linked back to brands within your space, to your competitors. So therefore, if there is that proof of concept, it means that they should, if the content's right, provide that link back to you as well. Something else that we see legacy brands do really well is reactive PR. And there's quite a few reasons for this. One of them is because they do kind of have that weight of the brand and the authority behind them. A lot of these legacy brands are brands that kind of we talk about that you see on the high street that are in the press a lot. So it means that journalists will lean on them to give kind of authority to their piece. Money saving expert and Martin Lewis is a perfect example of this. He is kind of his own brand within himself. So he gets articles written about just kind of the commentary he's sharing, as with this Birmingham Live example. But also a brand like Bankrate, who are able to comment on kind of trends and emerging kind of news topics, such as everything that's going on currently with the American election. So although these legacy brands are doing really well in this space, there are a couple of things that challenger and competitor brands can be doing just to try and to get in ahead of them. One of them is building relationships. So making sure that kind of you know your target journalists and that your target journalists know you and your brand, the experts that you have and the commentary that you can offer, as well as the topics that you can touch upon. These will help lean into kind of that speed of sharing insight. So it means that those journalists can come to you and say, oh, I'm looking for expert commentary. Do you have someone to provide it? But also the speed of sharing insight. We want to get in ahead of those legacy brands so that the journalist sees our email first, uses our content first, and that then means that they can publish their article as quickly as possible. Especially in this day and age when the news agenda is moving so quickly, it's important that we are providing commentary as quickly as possible so that those journalists can kind of react to the news agenda as quickly as possible as well. Something else that we can be doing is expressing an opinion, something that the legacy brands, as kind of comes with having a big brand that's been built over lots of years or over several years, means that there can be a lot of red tape around it. There's a lot of things that they can and can't say, a lot of topics that they will avoid, a lot of semantics that they can't change. So that's where, as a challenger brand, whilst you're beginning to build your brand and kind of cement yourself within the space, you're a bit freer in terms of the restrictions, just to express a couple more opinions. If you are able to do that, then that is something that we would recommend, just to differentiate yourself from the competition, as Ed was saying. And then also sharing internal data. This is something that journalists look for across all categories, really. Just something that they can't have a quick Google or find themselves. It's something that's interesting to them and therefore interesting to their readership. I'll hand back over to you now, Ed.
Great, thanks, Violet. Yeah, so for this next section, we'll be discussing the importance of EEAT, particularly for the Your Money, Your Life market. So to give a bit more context as what one EEAT is and what Your Money, Your Life stands for, I'll just recap kind of what Google discussed in 2023. So essentially, Google have stated that our systems give more weight to content that aligns with strong EEAT for topics that could significantly impact health, financial stability, or the safety of people, or the welfare of well-being for society. We call these Your Money or Your Life topics, or YMYL for short. So you'll hear EEAT and Your Money, Your Life thrown around quite a lot, but it is quite straightforward. Essentially, anything within the financial space, health, welfare, or kind of safety is really paramount. And Google takes a lot more importance around the content here because it could be impacting people's livelihoods or lifestyle if the information is incorrect. Therefore, the information that needs to be provided is judged at a much higher and more critical manner. So what does EEAT actually stand for? So you might have heard of EAT before, which typically was expertise, authoritativeness, and trust. Google added another E, that stands for experience. And whilst all of these are not specifically a ranking factor, it is essentially a component that Google looks for in their search quality rater guidelines, and something that has become increasingly important over recent months. So when we look at EE and the A and T, essentially it all stands around how Google rates and assesses how trustworthy a site is. And we've got expertise, authoritativeness, and experience all actually feed into trust. And trust is the main part here. So essentially, expertise is how well you are an expert in the field. Do you have relevance to that field or topic? Experience, again, relates to how experienced you are, what are your kind of qualifications, what is the kind of content supporting that you actually know what you're talking about. Authoritativeness is all around kind of how Google seemed, if you're an authority in the space, this is largely helped through the backlink building side of things. If we've got lots of high authority backlinks coming through from relevant authoritative niche sources, it again helps boost that authoritativeness. And again, all of these pull together to prove how trustworthy you are to Google. But actually, how does this kind of inform your SEO strategy? So there's kind of three main areas that it kind of affects. The first one being providing rich, helpful, and unique content. And this is probably one of the most important, if not the most important parts here. Google is looking for really helpful, informational, educational, comprehensive content that's going to be useful and valuable to users. So you need to be creating content that kind of fits alongside that narrative. And is engaging. If it doesn't kind of hit those criteria, you are going to struggle to rank, particularly in these highly regulated markets where this is so paramount. So you really need to be, one, very accurate with the information that you're providing, but two, it needs to be helpful and useful and educational and comprehensive, essentially, in what you're covering. The second part of this as well is aligning the content format with the SERP landscape. So this essentially means providing content in the way that people are looking for content. So when you go and do a search on Google, you might find that the whole first page of listings is all transactional based pages. Therefore, that implies that you are probably better to optimize a transactional page for that content. However, if you see that a lot of the content that's being provided is informational or it's kind of blog-based content, again, that means you should probably be writing and optimizing blog-based content for that piece. If you try and create a piece of content or a page that maybe doesn't fit in with what the search intent is, Google is unlikely to necessarily show it. So again, you want to make sure that rich, helpful content is in the style and format, actually what people are looking to search for, essentially. The final part as well is around kind of demonstrating and building authority. So again, what you want to do is make sure that on site you've got enough features and kind of capabilities to demonstrate that you do have these kind of EEAT factors taken into account. So that makes sense across both articles, PLPs, product pages, landing pages, and it will help defend and grow your visibility within the Your Money Life sector if you're able to do so. So here are some examples of how you can actually show and demonstrate EEAT on the page. So some of these we kind of mentioned before, but again, it still stands. One of the main ones is showcasing any awards or certifications that you might have. So again, if you do have any legitimate qualifications that are industry standard, demonstrate those on the page. It will help not only from a user perspective, but Google will understand what that is. And it will, again, relate that back to you being a trustworthy, authoritative source. Again, qualitative and quantitative reviews are very, very helpful here. Linking through to your Trustpilot, having the actual kind of quote from a user being on there is also very helpful. Again, it helps highlight to Google that you are trustworthy in what you say. Obviously, Trustpilot is very well renowned and Google understands that, but obviously other review systems are equally fine. Even your own review rating system on your website is completely fine. Having them on there, though, is really valuable. What you can also do as well is leverage some expert testimonials as well, making sure that you've got kind of relevant authors on there and you've got some author bio pages. So all of these kind of link together quite neatly. What we would always recommend doing is if you are writing a piece of content or a blog, that ideally that be written by an industry expert. By including that industry expert on the page, Google is able to understand that that content has been written by an authoritative source. And you can further reinforce this as well by having essentially kind of author hubs and author pages. So whilst you have the author on the bottom of the page, you can then link that through to essentially a profile page, which outlines the authority, expertise, and experience of that author. So you could include their past qualifications, previous blogs they've written, what essentially makes them an expert in their field. This is your chance to really show to Google. And what you can then do is you can ladder that up into having an expert hub. And this is something that Compare the Market and Money Supermarket in particular do really, really well, where they have clearly defined experts for each topic that they cover. And then you can click through to that to find out what their expertise are, what their current blogs are, and how it all relates through. All of this information is just providing Google with more data as to why you are authoritative and expert in your space. And if you are doing this and your competitors aren't, it's going to be a real opportunity for you to kind of get ahead of the competition. The other part of this as well is trust. As I mentioned before, having the security symbols in your product and service can really, really be valuable. Again, Google is able to understand what kind of security certificates there are, for example. So if you are listing that you're certified in a certain security element, that will be very, very valuable. The other part of this as well is content freshness. Google, particularly in this space, know that information changes regularly and it needs to be updated. So ensuring that your content is fresh, relevant, and up to date is really valuable. And if you explicitly declare this on the site by telling the user and Google when the site was last updated, Google's able to tell, actually, yeah, this information is right up to date. This is more valuable than something that was written a year ago. Therefore, I should show this piece of fresh content rather than an older piece. And I'll touch upon why that's important as well later on. The final part of this is around authoritativeness, and having a lot of kind of citing related guides and content on core topics is really important. So what you want to do is create, obviously, content around your key topic and service, but also what you want to do is create relevant supporting content around this. Again, each of those themselves will be able to be optimized and targeted, but if you have a lot of supporting information and content around a particular topic, you can internally link that through to the core topic page, and it helps reinforce your relevancy within that topic or niche. And by having a lot of kind of internal links, it again helps share that equity from authoritative backlinks, which is actually one of the main parts that we can kind of help drive authoritativeness. So making sure that we are getting high quality backlinks from high authority sites that are really relevant either to the industry or to your niche. They're super, super valuable. And actually, recently there was a Google leak in May from Google's API document warehouse, which essentially contained, I think it was like 2,500 different modules covering 1,400 different attributes. And all of this gave us a bit of an insight as to actually how Google is marking up backlinks and how they're looking at content to make sure it's fresh or relevant. And essentially there were kind of 4 key takeaways that we found from this. It's that Google do actually measure site authority as a metric that they look for as a ranking factor. So if you get a backlink from a highly authoritative site, Google will know that that is more authoritative than another site. This is something that we've always kind of thought was there, but we did have confirmation now from this that it is something that Google looks at. So again, we want to be targeting those really high authority domains. The second part is news sites in particular are encoded with a special tag that marks them as high quality news sites, and again suggests that sites such as The Guardian, The Times, The Financial Times, etc., have more authority and trust put behind them simply because they are news sites. The third part, which touches on what I just mentioned a bit earlier, is freshness. Freshness is something that Google specifically looks for, and it actually tags fresh content as being high quality. So if a piece of content is older, even if it was really great quality, the new fresh page will be essentially seen as of greater importance than the older page. And then the final insight that was really interesting is the impact of local and relevant links. So Google also tagged the location of where the link is from. So a link from a similar or relevant region is more valuable than one from maybe, say, a different region or a different location. It kind of makes sense, but again, it's something that Google, we now have clarification on, and means that actually we want to be targeting relevant sectors, but within your own market as well. There's no point getting links from other markets. Potentially they will be potentially less valuable than ones from your own that are more relevant. So how can we actually apply all of this? One of the main things that we found from the kind of leak as well is it kind of reinforced our position as to how we would maybe go about link building and particularly building that authority. And one of the key takeaways was that digital PR really is a key tactic in terms of doing this. In terms of how to rank for high volume competition terms, digital PR and particularly link building is going to be what sets you apart from those kind of top 3 positions. We found that editorial high quality content works the best. So targeting those, rich news sites is really, really valuable, particularly because they have really fresh content. We also want to be making sure that we're targeting local markets as well. So targeting outreach into relevant European zones where it makes sense for the brand. And then finally, making sure that we've got a consistent approach so we're getting really fresh content building up over time and helping boost that authority. Now I'll pass over to Charlotte to talk about digital PR in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, the good news is that it isn't just Google that is looking for expertise, it's also journalists as well. So if there are ways that you can kind of reposition some of your on-site content and make it more newsworthy for journalists, that's definitely a way to kind of make some of the content you're already creating work harder. We know that this is something that journalists are looking for because we've done some analysis for one of the finance brands that we work with. We basically looked at all of the content that we have achieved for them across the year period and broken it down into kind of 3 different sections. So location focused angles, which could be kind of your regional stats. So this city ranks higher than this city for this metric, data-driven headlines, and then also expert commentary. And as you can see by this graph, it's actually expert commentary that landed us the most coverage with 55%. So that just shows that it's really important to make sure that you're including experts throughout all of the content that you're creating, not just on-site content, but also those that you are hoping to share with journalists from a digital PR perspective. And then going back to just what we were touching upon earlier, legacy brands and authority brands do this really well. And they're doing this by creating kind of regular reports, whether that's monthly, whether that's yearly, based on topics that they are well versed to be talking about. So there's just a couple of examples here. Rightmove have a monthly house price index. The AA talk about kind of potholes every month. So that means that they can talk about the councils that are filling in the most potholes, where potholes are the most common. And then also the NatWest group do a yearly report looking into the kids economy, which is a really nice fun piece, particularly from a digital PR perspective, to be outreaching and sharing with journalists. So just understanding how much pocket money children receive year on year and what they're spending that on. And this just helps build that authority, because it means that, particularly in the case of Rightmove, for example, and also the AA as well, when there are topics coming up around, or news articles breaking around these topics, journalists have these brands front and center. And also by doing them on a regular basis, whether that's monthly, quarterly, or yearly, it means that you also are adding in comparison statistics to the content you're creating, which just helps add a bit more authority, a bit more information to it. So you can track trends, whether they're on the down, whether they're on the increase, and what those kind of people are doing about them. And this kind of expertise is something that we really focused on when working with Capital on Tap, which is a small business credit card site. We created 10 campaigns with them over 6 months, utilising desk research, survey data, but then also industry experts. Every single campaign that we created, we worked with an internal expert to provide actionable advice for their target audience, but also kind of for journalists throughout each piece of content. And this resulted in 172 placements, 94 of which included links. And it drove 2,500 new visitors to the site, and they in turn saw a 10% increase in P1 keywords. So that's just really a great example of showing how kind of marrying the expertise that Google's looking for with the expertise that journalists are looking for can really prove valuable. So I'm just going to continue talking now, but I'm going to move on to how to navigate compliance and implement effective processes to see kind of maximum success. This is a bit of a snapshot here on how kind of our regular production process looks like. So it tends to include 2 rounds of feedback. It does generally tend to be kind of from our main point of contact, whether that's kind of within the SEO team internally or within kind of a marketing or PR team. So we create the campaign brief, the client signs that off. We go away, create the data and research, which feeds into our copy, creative and media lists. The client signs that off, and then we launch the campaign. However, through our experience in regulated markets, particularly with the finance industry, this changes quite a lot. We do have kind of our regular kind of day-to-day SEO or PR contacts involved, but as is kind of expected, we then also need to have kind of legal's approval, brand team's approval in some cases, and then also kind of the spokesperson approval if we are using expert commentary, which, as I've just said, kind of we should be across as many campaigns as possible. So what we have done is just adapted our process to allow for these multiple stakeholders. We've also, you can see here, added in a new stage, which is the data and copy overview. So what this is it's a document. Instead of just sharing kind of the data set and the copy in one stage, as we kind of did in the previous process I showed you, we create the data and then we create a data and copy overview. So this is just so that the finance brand and the finance team can begin to understand how we want to structure the copy based on the data we have. And one thing with digital PR is that we are very data led, so we can have kind of an idea in our head of how we want a campaign to look like, but until we've got the data, we don't fully know how that copy is going to sit. So by creating the data and copy overview, we're giving an understanding to the brand team around kind of the positioning, being aware of the semantics, and just so that they can understand kind of how that data is then being built into the wider story. And one thing that's really important when kind of you're understanding that there's going to be so many more different key stakeholders involved, each with kind of their own understanding and things that they need to be aware of, is keeping this at the forefront of your mind, and particularly in the ideation process. So ideation is kind of really key to everything because that sets us up for the entire production process. So we make sure that kind of there's lots of different things that we take into an ideation. So we create a pre-ideation brief, which makes sure that everyone in the ideation is clued up on the brand, clued up on the topics that they can and can't talk about, and also just aware of the media landscape. So look, several different parts feed into this pre-ideation brief. One of them is kind of the link intersect that I spoke about at the very beginning. So where a competitor's landing coverage that you aren't. Also understanding the brand, so understanding the topics that you can and can't talk about, looking at those keyword opportunities and PLP opportunities. So all of the kind of analysis that Ed spoke through in terms of the keywords and the content gap feeds into what we create, competitor research, and of course that media landscape. So by ensuring that we've got all of this information and we're considering all of those key stakeholders, it means that that ideation is going to be really productive and we are guiding it in the right direction. There are 3 key areas that a good digital PR campaign should cover. One of which is relevance. So we want to make sure that you as a brand are well versed to be talking about the topic that the campaign is creating. One way to do that is including your expert commentary. Secondly, that we're creating unique insight. So making sure that this isn't a topic that competitors have done recently, or if they have, is there a way that we can do it and make it better? And another key thing that's really important is having multiple angles. The finance space in particular is such a crowded market. So by allowing to multiple angles, it means that we can tap into different markets while still remaining relevant to the brand. So this is an example, cities for a career in fintech. It allows us to go to regional publications. So an example being New York ranks as the best city to pursue a career in fintech. So we can go out to kind of the New York specific publications. We can go out to general business press, again with kind of the expert angle, and then also the national press as well. This just means that we're opening up the number of outlets that this campaign is relevant to, and therefore the number of journalists, just making the content that we create work as hard as possible. Something else that we need to consider when we are working with these kind of regulated industries and regulated brands is existing journalist relationships. This is something that kind of in our experience, these brands always have some kind of internal PR team or marketing team. And it's really important that we are working together with these teams and not kind of cannibalizing efforts. So these are just 3 different ways that we have worked with these internal teams to go about ensuring that the content is targeted to the right journalists, but not kind of standing on each other's toes. So first of all is a client blacklist. So this is where the client team provides a list of kind of no-go journalists or publications where they hold really strong relationships and they just don't want us to touch on that. Secondly is that we kind of share we share publications that we think, based on the topic and the content and competitor research we have, that we should be targeting. And it's then kind of puts the onus on the client team to go through and approve or reject those publications. And we're then free to kind of contact any of the journalists within those publications. And then thirdly is on a case-by-case basis. So this is where we share a media list, every single media list for every single campaign we create. And the client goes through, reviews this, kind of accepts or rejects every single journalist that we want to contact. And we can then begin to build up a blacklist for this. As I said kind of back at the beginning, relationships are key in this regulated industry and in such a fast-moving media outlet as well. So it's really important that we are kind of respecting those relationships held by the agency, but also by the brand as well, and working together to see success. And this is just an example of where we have done exactly that to prove that. So this is a comparison site that we work with, and we saw a 44% year-on-year increase in the number of keywords ranking positions 1 to 3 for this insurance client by implementing the steps that I've just spoken you through. So by making sure expertise was at the forefront of everything we were doing, making sure it's relevant to the product that they offer, and also making sure that it's timely and offering unique insight. I'll hand back over to you, Ed.
Great, thanks, Charlotte. Yeah, so that essentially is the end of the topics that we were going to cover. In summary, there's kind of 3 core points that we kind of want to take away from this. The first being that you can use legacy brands to really spot valuable opportunities and help build the strategies by analysing what works well for them and applying those learnings. And if you're able to implement a multi-angle approach, you're able to drive more opportunities and diversity for your strategy. The second part is you should always be looking to improve your content to meet the EEAT factors that Google values the most. You want to provide really helpful, useful content to users. And you want to support your content with those high authority backlinks to help reinforce the trust in your sector and in your niche, and to improve your site's overall authority. And then thirdly, you want to make sure that you're optimizing processes for key stakeholder reviews to help ensure that all the content and strategies align with the business goals and standards, and that they're fitting with those compliance and legal teams where needed. And finally, that journalists always respond well to expert commentary. So try and leverage this where you can to help gain more media coverage and help build credibility in the space. So that is it. Thank you very much for joining us for this webinar. Hopefully everything was very valuable, but if you have any questions or you want to discuss anything in more detail, please reach out to us either through the website, or you can contact Jess on the email below here. But thank you very much for your time.